Hey everyone, Raj Zahu here, realtor in Austin, Texas, coming at you with a market update. Obviously, the market has been red hot. I'm sure everyone is aware of this. What I would like to cover are different catalysts that I've seen in the last 3 to 6 months significantly affect pricing and analyzing those catalysts moving forward to try to determine a good game plan. So if you're asking yourself, when should I buy? Stay tuned to the end of this. I'm going to answer that question. But first, I'll get into the catalyst. Before I do that, I do want to say I decided several months ago to take a break from social media. The simple reason why is I ruptured my Achilles tendon playing soccer. At that time, I knew I was going to be on crutches and a boot for at least a few months, and it was going to be difficult to walk. I figured out pretty quickly I could do everything I needed to do in real estate. I was just significantly slower getting around, obviously with crutches and a boot. So at that time, I decided if I was going to delete something out of my work activity, I was going to delete social media and I was going to put all my effort, focus, and time and energy into the clients that I have. I'm so happy that I did. We were able to get several clients under contract, currently under contract on about $3.7 million, which is very exciting because it's not only a rewarding process to see people about to get into the home of their dreams, but some of these clients that I've had are already seeing appreciation in new construction or homes that they're under contract on. So, very excited for everyone who's gotten under contract so far. Also, just as excited to start doing more of these videos and talk a little bit more about my strategy to try to get buyers into this hyper competitive market. But again, first, let's go through different catalysts that are happening here in Austin, how it's affecting the market, and what I believe is going to happen moving forward. Let's get right into it. First off, I wanted to say thank you to Texas National Title for sending me this information on a monthly basis for agents. They also provide an economic outlook on usually a quarterly basis, which I always find is very informative. I attended that last month, and based on what I heard there, as well as what we're seeing here, it simply comes down to supply and demand. So anytime we're analyzing the real estate market, we're looking at those two big factors. So honing in on supply, the obvious reason why supply was constricted is people last summer when the pandemic really hit Texas, you're starting to see a drop in inventory, which the blue line is obviously 2020. The purple, red, and green line are years prior to that. So as you can tell, we saw a steep drop in May, June, July, and August. And the virus really surged around the summer months here in Texas. So obviously sellers were concerned about having strangers walk through their home when they have no idea what's happening. And here, I think everybody was tuned in New York City and what was happening there. But then here is when it came to Texas and why you saw a drop. Why we continue to see a drop into the fall were, I believe, two big factors. Number one, builders started to get wiped out with inventory that they had. So in the summer, we saw a surge in demand, which I'll talk about demand in a second, but that surge in demand wiped out builders to the point where I had a builder in a community called Palmera Ridge, which is in Leander, has a elementary school on site. It's in one of the fastest growing areas in Leander off of Ronald Reagan Boulevard. A lot of the development that's coming out to that area. And there was a builder there that sold 43 homes in a matter of one morning, and they just shut down the model home, shut down all sales. And I started to see this wave happen. So a wave would go to Palmera Ridge. When they were all shut down, then the wave would go just north of there and then just north of there. And it just basically kept spreading through Leander, Georgetown, and even prior to that, Cedar Park and Round Rock and Pflugerville. So unbelievable time that summer. But that was a big factor. So obviously, builders can't just snap a finger and pave new roads and run new utilities and have more inventory the month after. They all basically shut down due to the sales that they made. And then also lumber prices skyrocketed. Of course, the virus disrupted supply chain management of many different types of building materials. The number one cost builders have when building a house is lumber. And when the prices skyrocketed, I think it was about 100%, it went up in the summer of 2020. Builders did not know what to do because they have customers locked in at a certain price, and the builders are accepting the risk of volatility of pricing on their back end for building materials. So a lot of people think builders are making money hand over fist. there were builders that closed on deals in the summer and were really hurting once lumber prices skyrocketed after that. So there are some circumstances where maybe they're not always making money hand over fist, and sometimes they were hurting. So that caused a lot of fear and panic where, again, they decided to shut down, not just from the surge in demand and not having enough lots to just continue opening up, but the volatility of pricing on their back end was too significant to continue selling at the rate that they were. The other big factor, and what I don't think a lot of people foresaw, it was hard to foresee at that time, was when there is not enough inventory for people to buy, it creates this catch-22. You have a lot of sellers who want to sell and capture the equity that they just saw in the last couple years, the massive amount of appreciation, but they have nothing to buy. So they want to sell, but there's nothing to buy, so they just don't sell. And that catch-22 I found was, I don't think a lot of people predicted that, but as I spoke to more and more people throughout the fall and winter months, they're all saying the same thing. Want to sell, they don't know what to buy. What I would say, though, also what happened in the fall and winter is, the virus rates went back up towards the holiday months, which I don't think anybody was too surprised in. And on top of that, in the months of January and February, we saw another surge in demand. Talking about demand here, demand is a little bit less. There are less statistics with that. I mean, how do you gauge interest? You monitor phone calls to agents in Austin. It's a little bit more difficult to predict that. What I would say, though, is what I saw personally is demand in summer of 2020 was due to some employers telling their employees that they could work from home permanently. Obviously, that was in the tech field, or it was predominantly tech. In January and February, I thought we saw probably 10 times the amount of employers telling their employees they can finally work from home permanently. It's not this gray area of, can they move? Should they not move? Should they stay where they are? A lot of employees were told they could just work from home wherever they wanted. That's what created this surge into the Austin market. There are obviously a lot of attractive reasons to come to Austin, but if you're going to work from home, why would you pay state income tax in other places? Why wouldn't you come here, live in a great neighborhood, no state income tax, relatively low cost compared to other, big cities that are out there? It was a no-brainer, and that caused an absolute tidal wave to occur into the Austin market, which we've always had interest. We've always been, top 3 fastest growing cities in the U.S. For a while. But this was unprecedented. I mean, the most amount of demand that I've ever seen in this market. To give an example, on New Year's Day, there was a property in Round Rock. Nothing special about it. It received 96 offers in 2 days, and it was a rainy, cold Austin day. We don't get a lot of those, but we did that day, and there was a line of about 15, 20 people to get into this home, and ended up receiving 96 offers. Can't tell you when I've ever heard a story. I can't think of a story like that in the past. This was absolutely unprecedented. So those are the catalysts for supply. Is we really need builders to come back with a little bit more inventory. I am starting to see it trickle back. It says inventory went down here in February. I've seen other statistics where it's had a slight uptick. I believe I'm actually on Williamson County on this, so there could be other counties where it started to go back up. I am starting to hear that March's data is going to be announced in the next week or two, so we should see an uptick in inventory from what I'm hearing. And I've also seen that on market where neighborhoods that had one property available over the course of a week or two, I'm now starting to see 3, 4, maybe 5 or 6 in certain pockets of North Austin. So, what I would say moving forward is you have to analyze the catalyst for inventory. Obviously, the supply is a big factor, and builders are going to play a big factor in that. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but then also gauging demand, which we'll also talk about. So let's get into those catalysts and try to determine what's going to happen. On the demand side, it's so difficult to predict simply because to gauge demand in the future, you have to be in the minds of the CEOs across America. Are they planning to come to Austin? Based on the track record that we've seen of Oracle coming to Austin and Apple building their second campus here and Google coming here and Facebook building around the domain and Amazon having offices here, it looks very promising for the future of tech of Austin. but who's going to announce, or will anybody announce in the next 6 to 12 months? Everyone has been monitoring Elon Musk's Twitter. He seems to continue to tweet about his move here to Austin, which has already happened. And now he keeps talking about housing and how we need more houses. He's already had Tesla's factory, which is being built here in the southeast portion of Austin. Is something going to happen here where maybe there's an announcement? Who knows? I mean, all we can do is speculate. But my point is, demand is so difficult to predict, because if there is another tech announcement, you can see, and what I've seen in the past is when that announcement comes in, there's an absolute surge in demand, prices go up, and then everyone who was trying to get in at a certain price is now priced out. Just like that. It takes a month or two from an announcement. Good example of that was Oracle announced in the middle of December of 2020. I had buyers that were on market, and it went under contract in the next couple weeks. If they would have waited another month or two, they would have cost themselves about another $20,000 to $40,000 in some new construction communities. So, that type of stuff. It wasn't maybe all Oracle. There's obviously different catalysts and variables, but that is absolutely a big factor. So demand, much more difficult to predict. Supply is something that I think is much easier to monitor. What we will be monitoring a lot is going to be builders. You might be asking yourself, well, I'm not interested in new construction. I want to live around the Domain, or I want to live in Avery Ranch or Cedar Park or an area like that. And you might be asking yourself, well, what's the big deal? I don't want new construction. How does that affect my pricing? It absolutely does, because when you have buyers that are interested in Avery Ranch or Cedar Park, especially tech workers who maybe are going to be commuting to Apple when that second campus is going to finish here, or the Domain, which has Amazon, Facebook, VRBO, Indeed, they will still look in areas of like Leander or Southwest Georgetown, different parts of this area. So they are interested in Avery Ranch and Cedar Park, but they are also open-minded to getting new construction in Leander and Georgetown. If there is not any new construction here in Leander and Georgetown, then everyone is hyper-focused on this area, and that's what causing a surge in demand into these resale homes. And so what I would believe in the future is if, and I shouldn't say if, I think it's when builders open up more inventory, because it's just a matter of time, we should see a little bit of it should ease the burden of so much demand into these resale homes. And that's not to say that we're going to see prices fall right away. It could be possible that you just see less negotiating on terms. Like right now, I'm seeing people waiving their inspection period or option period on a resale or an older home, where you have to have a very high risk tolerance for doing something like that. I'm seeing almost everyone, waive their appraisal contingency, but I'm also starting to see people waiving their financing right to get, or their buyer financing right in the third party financing addendum. Something that's, again, very high risk. So if we start to see supply pick up with builders and that eases the burden, again, prices don't necessarily need to come down. You might just have less negotiating, where when you have the top 2 to 3 offers, most sellers are pinning them together and the price is high, but they stop talking about price because they've already come in with their highest and best, and they start negotiating terms. And you might see a little bit less of that if more inventory does open up. What we will be monitoring with builders is lumber prices. This is last summer where lumber prices skyrocketed. They did start to drop in the fall, as you see here. But then as the rates of the virus went back up during the holiday months, they went back up here. And now I just don't think lumber mills are getting to anywhere near capacity with the current restrictions due to protecting their workers, which obviously is a good thing, because we don't want to see people suffer from working and contracting something while at work. At the same time, I think with the vaccine rollout, we should hopefully start to see building material costs calm down, and volatility decrease of building material costs. Again, just speculating here, but I would say as the vaccine rolls out and rates go down, I think a lot of people are predicting that hopefully these building materials calm down and we start to see more inventory. Last but not least, so you're probably asking yourself, well, what should I do? Should I wait to buy a home? Should I buy now? And the answer to that question is it really depends on your current situation. I would say what I'm seeing the biggest mistakes people are making right now are they're not factoring in for older homes all the costs of home ownership as things continue to break down in the home. They're not factoring that in well. They see a bunch of bidders after a 1998 home. It's 23 years old. They don't care about the roof. They don't care about foundation or other factors. They just go right into it, come in at the top of their budget, and they're not factoring in all the costs associated with maintaining an older home where that probability of things breaking down faster is much higher than obviously a new build or a newer home. So I see that as a mistake. And then also what I would say is people are not asking themselves, how long am I going to plan to hold on to this property? And I think that's something you absolutely should be talking about before buying in this market. Because if you're planning on holding a house for the next 10 to 15 years, I feel like you are in good hands being in Austin, because Austin, just like Elon Musk said, it's going to be a boom town for the next 50 years. I believe in that because our value proposition has always been high, still is high, and I think for the foreseeable future will be high, in that we have no state income tax. It's very livable. It's a very fun, cool, hip city to be in. I don't see that changing in the near future, and that's why I think if you can hold long term, I think you're in good hands. If you're into the market and might be selling in 3 to 4 years, I would be concerned and hyper focused on your area that you're buying, because if you're buying in an area that has let's say low rated schools and is in an area that's surrounded by future new construction, like deep into Leander, deep into Georgetown, east of 130 in Pflugerville, parts of South Austin, closer to like Buda or Kyle. If you're going to be surrounded by new construction in 3 to 4 years, when we're probably looking at a different market, we should expect to see more supply pickup from builders. We have nothing but land here in Texas. I would be very cautious, because the low-rated schools and a lot of supply by builders who are going to be offering incentives like money back towards closing, warranties that come with new construction, it's difficult to battle against those builders if you're in that type of area. So again, be hyper-focused on your situation, how long you plan on holding the home that you want to be in. Be very cautious, I think, with older homes. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes I'm seeing people make. And then last but not least, do your due diligence up front before you get into this market and get convinced to start waiving all these contingencies. Know what that means. Know what that means for your finances. Know what that means for your rights to talk to people about this type of stuff. And I think if you do your due diligence up front and ask yourself what you really value coming into this market. Do you value home ownership? What do you value in home ownership? I think if that why is strong enough, in a lot of cases, I think it's well worth it. So that's it for now. I hope this market update helps. I do plan on doing a lot more of these videos in the future now that I'm up and running and walking normally again, and excited for everyone who's looking to move into Austin. It's one of the best decisions my wife and I ever made, and we're so happy because over the last year we've been able to attract different family and different friends from across the United States here into Austin. So hopeful that happens for you, and hopeful that happens for your friends and family as well. Take care.